Call the meeting to order. It is currently 1:01 p.m. Thank you for your patience as I sorted out my technological issues. I'm going to apologize in advance. I had a chest infection for a couple of weeks, so my voice may sound crackly as we are talking today. Um, Thanks everyone for coming today, and thanks for staff for coming to speak to us about the Springfield House and Escott Town Hall project. Before we move into the adoption of the agenda, there has been a request that the agenda be adopted, but we're going to propose to bring staff update 8.1.1 forward ahead of the business today so that staff have the opportunity to do the presentation up front. So I would ask, is there a mover for the agenda? Jonathan, seconded by Keith. All those in favor? Opposed? Thanks, everyone. Adoption and receipt of the minutes may have a mover. Okay, we will. So we haven't finished the minutes, so we will.
Here, resolutions are right there.
Perfect, thank you. Any pecuniary interest for today? Not seeing any delegations, presentations. We don't have any. So at this point, we will move over to the staff update on Springfield House and the Escott Town Hall project.
Yes, that's me. For those that you don't know me, I'm Jonathan Cross. I'm Manager of Infrastructure and Environmental Services here at the township. I've been overseeing the Escott project for the last few months. Just a status update, which I did share with a group of the archives people on Tuesday. I guess it was Wednesday. We are projected to hopefully start moving in to the Escott archives. We're hopeful for middle of May, end of May, barring a sign off on the building inspection, the final. It's coming together. We do have our TSSA certificate for the newly installed lift, which was several weeks delayed, just getting some parts in place, and that's been rectified last week. There are some minor deficiencies that we're working through and a couple little bugs with our electronic system with a door operator, but other than that, they're just minor deficiencies. The township has a few maintenance things they have to do with the existing septic system on the archives that are planned as soon as the contractor is signed off, that we'll take that part over. As for Springfield House, all the interior renovations have been completed as of last year. We are waiting on an archaeological study approval from the provincial government to be able to move forward with the remaining scope of work on the exterior restoration of the foundation. We're hopeful that approval will be granted in the next few weeks. We've been waiting probably 6 weeks since the application went in. So it was the stage 2 survey that was completed. We're waiting for the approval on that, and then the proposed stage 3 would be approved following that. The stage 3 would have to happen before any more work was to commence with the Springfield House at this point. It is coming together quite nicely. Like I said, we met with the main user group on Wednesday to kind of formulate a plan on moving them in with what they have on site for storage and all their items that need to be moved over. So we had kind of a quick touch point on that and the progress as well. So if there's any questions or...
Hi, through you. I heard the number 150 artifacts. I was surprised that there would be that kind of number of things in the ground.
Yeah, there is a report from the stage 2. There was a number of artifacts. Now, we're saying artifacts, we're talking, it could be smaller than a dime.
Buttons and things.
But there's lots of things that they've found in their study so far. A lot of China. There was some toys from maybe the 1940s. that they noted, but it's very interesting to read the reports and see how they're able to identify things and where their origins were from. I can't remember the exact, but there's some very old things that they've been finding. Glassware and ceramics were a lot of it, but there was also like lapel pins and different things.
And I understand that further archaeological investigation relates to the foundation of the church that was on the site.
Yes, so that is part of the proposal for stage 3 is locating the foundation, which would be situated roughly north of where the existing temporary trailer is in the parking lot. And try and from there, we don't know where, if it's just defined it and documented or if there's going to be further studies on that. There's several things proposed in stage 3 around the foundation and more field work too, and be south of the actual Springfield house in the yard.
Other questions? If not, thank you for the update. This brings us back to business at hand. The first item on the business is item 7.1, 181 Tower Road. There is a draft cultural heritage evaluation report, designation bylaw, and notice of intention to designate. May I have a mover for the motion so we can open discussion, or unless staff wanted to do a presentation first?
Staff do have a few remarks to make. So, and just in terms of background for these business items, it was last year that this committee provided a recommendation to council that was approved to retain a consultant to complete the evaluations of 4 properties within the township. And these 4 properties were the subject of a request from each property owner to have an evaluation done of their properties to consider designation under the Heritage Act. The consultant that was selected is Heritage Studio out of Kingston, and they completed 4 Ontario 906 evaluations and prepared the cultural heritage briefs for the properties. And staff did accompany the consultant on site to do the evaluations of 186 Main Street and 117 Raisin Road. The 3 categories of cultural heritage value under the Act are physical design value, historical associative value, and contextual value. Under the Heritage Act, a property only needs to meet one of the 3 criteria for designation under Part 4. For the 3 properties on the agenda today, the evaluations concluded that for 181 Tower Road, 3 criteria have been met. For 186 Main Street, 2 criteria have been met. And then for 117 Raisin Road, 2 criteria were met. The evaluation briefs were circulated to members of the Heritage Properties Working Group, and there was a working group meeting in the fall to review the draft documents and for staff to receive feedback from the working group members. The staff incorporated the feedback of the working group members and prepared the 4 designation draft bylaws and the notice of intent documents that are on the agenda today. And we did circulate them to the respective property owners along with the evaluation briefs to receive their input and questions and feedback. Although the evaluations did identify interior attributes as well, interior attributes have not been included in the draft designation bylaws that are before you today. The staff received positive feedback in support to proceed from owners of 3 out of the 4 property owners, those being the properties that are on the agenda. So following the distribution of the agenda with the draft documents, there was a concern received from a member in terms of how the properties are identified. In response to this concern, staff note that the Heritage Act prescribes the required content to include in the designation bylaw, and staff did confer with the township solicitor to confirm the correct legal descriptions of each of the properties to include in the designation bylaws. So from a timing perspective, 2 of the 3 property owners are very interested in securing designation as soon as possible so that they can submit a heritage property grant application for the one-time grant that the township is currently offering of up to $5,000 for newly designated properties. These property owners have projects that they would like to complete this summer if possible. So in summary, staff are recommending that the Municipal Heritage Committee recommend to council to give staff direction to serve notice of intent to designate the 3 properties under the Heritage Act, and that should no objections be served on the municipality within the 30 days from the publication of the notice, that each of the designation bylaws be presented to council for 3 readings. Thank you, and we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any,
Just a question, you said there were 4 properties, 3 properties here.
Through you, Chair. Yes, we did circulate the drafts to all 4 property owners, and one property owner being the owner of 247 Old River Road did express some reservations in proceeding, and we'll continue with the dialogue with the property owner, but we don't feel it's appropriate at this time, given that they've expressed hesitation at this point.
yes, I will speak to that. I actually am writing those and I'm behind.
Okay, my question is, process and how long it's gonna take for these 3 work their way through designation, one designation.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. So if the committee were to recommend today to council to serve notice of intent, we would look to have a publication in the 2 different newspapers involved with these properties in terms of circulation. That publication would, from 30 days from the publication date, would be the notice period. If no objections are received during that time frame, and then the recommendation includes giving staff direction to present the bylaws to council at the next available meeting for 3 readings. And then should that be passed, then the bylaws would take effect. Through you, Chair, staff, we're hopeful, and we'll be looking to advance things as we receive direction from council, if possible, to facilitate grant works coming forward. And it's possible that we would need to maybe call an additional meeting of the Heritage Committee to consider those grants to help with the timing.
We'll be talking 30 days, at least from now, before this would be presented to council. And we don't know how it will be council.
The recommendation indicates that the notices that council has to provide direction to give the notice of intent to designate. So the earliest council meeting we would be in front of right now would be May. If we go to the May meeting of council and get direction to publish the notice, then it would be published right after our meeting in May, which is the 2nd Monday, which would mean realistically, we would be taking them back to the July meeting of council, should there be no objections to the notice of designation. Following that, we would have to look at meeting dates for the committee if there's no objections to the notices of designation.
That's right. The Heritage Committee would have to look at it at meeting after that point.
No, so if the committee approves the recommendation today, council then needs to approve the posting of notice in the publication. It's a 30-day required notice of publication. So if the council meeting in May was the 2nd Monday, I don't know the 11th of May. So depending on publication dates, realistically, If there's no objections, it would go back to the meeting of council in July, which would be July 13th, following which the properties would be designated. And then we would have to look at meeting dates for the Heritage Committee to be able to bring forward an application for Heritage Celebration Grant, following which that recommendation from the committee would then go to council. So it's difficult for us to project what the timeline would be, but we can be working with the property owners in the meantime to ensure that their applications for grant are as complete as possible and ready to move as soon as we're ready to bring them forward. They would need to come to the Heritage Committee, though, before they go to council. So there's another reporting cycle in there that we would need to anticipate. So as Lindsay mentioned, we may need to look at some special dates to try to accommodate the timelines of the property owners.
Like we're now in the middle of April, we're talking 3 months before it's the grant application.
That's correct.
Other questions for staff? I have a recommended amendment, which we'll deal with if we have a mover and a seconder for the motion that is before us, which essentially is that the council directs staff to serve a notice of intention to designate. We'll start with the property at 181 Tower Road, known as the Bradley House, as a property of cultural heritage value and interest pursuant to Section 29 of the Heritage Act. And should no notice of objection be received by the clerk of the corporation of the township of Leeds and Thousand Islands within 30 days of there's a typo there, of the publication of the notice of intention to designate, the designation bylaw for 181 Tower Road be presented to council for all 3 readings, and that staff be directed to carry out the requirements as prescribed under Section 29(8) of the Heritage Act. May have a mover? Jean. I will be actually amending this, but we need to get it on the table for
No,
discussion.
you have to bring the amendment first. The amendment is voted on and then you vote on the amended motion.
Okay. So, I actually have a couple of small amendments with the bylaws. Under Regulation 38521, there is a requirement now that the specific heritage attributes be identified as how do they link to the specific criteria. So we actually have to state after the heritage attribute which criteria it represents, which is something we haven't done in the bylaws that are presented. I don't think it's something that should stop the process going forward, but I'd like to amend that prior to these bylaws going to council, that information, so the required information from 38521 be added in. It doesn't change the content, it's just really saying criteria 1, criteria 2. So just to be very specific. So that's a more recent requirement in terms of the legislation. So.
Ask the question. So
Just make sure you. Sorry.
thank you. The documents that we got for this, it shows which ones they're meeting.
So I'll use the example of 181 Tower Road. So where we say it's the 2-story farmhouse massing on a T plan, we actually have to now say criteria 1. So to be very specific about which of the provincial prescribed criteria the attribute relates to.
Okay, so
So
that's some procedural thing.
it is procedural. It's not intended to change that
Okay,
content.
thank you.
Just a question, who wrote these bylaws?
Through you, Chair. So the content of the evaluations that made its way into the bylaws is from the consultant's work, and planning staff drafted the bylaws using the information from the consultant's reports.
And should the consultants not have known this about this change?
To be fair to all involved, the legislative changes have happened so quickly and without a lot of information being provided to municipal heritage committees about how this should be done. It's not unexpected that that would not have been added in. It's something that does not, in my opinion, change the content, but it's something that I think can be addressed by just staff ensuring that that information is added in before it goes to council. It's something that I have seen across Ontario where there have been challenges with bylaws like this. Will someone move the amendment?
Could you restate the amendment?
So the amendment would be that staff add in the prescribed information from Regulation 385-21 in advance of the bylaws going to council. I think we had a mover and a seconder. Any discussion? Questions?
What regulation is it, sir?
385-21. So for those around the table, what this will just see is literally you'll just see criteria 1 through 9 added in after each attribute to show which which criteria it meets. So. And I think do I need to amend that? Yeah. Any other comment? Yes.
We'll ask then, since I sent, at the time we received these, I sent around an email to everyone pointing out that they were what I consider to be an error in the description of the location of the properties. Does that change have to be addressed with a similar motion here, an amendment?
So I will.
Through you, Chair. So the other aspects of Regulation 385-21 have been incorporated into the bylaw in terms of the municipal address, the property identification number, and as I stated, we did confer with the township solicitor to confirm an accurate legal description, which is required to be included in the designation bylaw.
Well, as I pointed out in my email, it described the properties using their lot and concession number, and then referred to the former township either of the rear of Leeds and Lansdowne or the front of Leeds and Lansdowne. And in both of those former townships, there is a lot and concession number in 2 different locations in each township. That same lot and concession number. That was the point I was trying to make. It shouldn't say the former township. It should say the geographic township of Leeds or the geographic township of Lansdowne, so that it's accurate in terms of the description of where the property is located.
And that's just pulled from the pen.
So
Through you, Chair. So when everything was put over from land registry to land titles, there were individuals working all over the province that input all of these legal descriptions. It's my understanding that Lindsay got this information right from the parcel abstracts. So that is what the legal description is. Understanding that some things don't exactly make sense, but that's what the legal description is on the deed. So when it was ported over, not everything was accurate because we understand that it's a former township or a geography or all of that stuff. And also the part lot and concession from the old townships were not always contemplated.
Well, I'm not following, but I'm not going to make a big issue of this.
To staff, I would just for confirmation for the committee members, these are the legal descriptions that were pulled from the roll numbers. Is that correct?
Through you, Chair, I had submitted a request directly to our township solicitor to verify the legal descriptions and report back with them, and those responses were used for the bylaws.
Perfect, thank you. So if there's an error, that'll fall to legal services. Any other questions, comments on the motion, on the, we have to vote on the amended motion. All those in favor of the amended motion? Okay, on the amendment, I should say, and now we've got to vote on the motion itself, which is, as I previously read, but with this added note that staff amend the bylaws in accordance with Regulation 38521. And I believe, Art, James, you have moved and seconded that. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. And that's for 181 Tower Road. The bylaw for 186 Main Street, I will say, before we get into that, I will have the same amendment for all three of the bylaws, so we'll vote on that individually. Did staff want to speak at all to 186 Main Street? Any additional comments?
No, thank you.
So I will put the motion before, just technically to add in that additional, that staff amend the bylaw in accordance with 38521. May I have a mover? James, seconder? Counselor? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Questions about this bylaw around the table? I do have one suggestion on the bylaw. With 181 Tower Road, we actually had the description of the building and then the other attributes as sort of sub-attributes of the building. What we have done here is the attributes have just sort of jumped to a description of the building. And what I would actually suggest is with this bylaw, we amend it accordingly so that it's like we actually refer to the building itself and then, you know, things like the massing, the sandstone walls, just so it's clear in the bylaw, we're only talking about the building and not, because it's a property designation, that it's not the whole of the property. So I think it would be important to focus on the structure itself. So it would be like the 1.5 story building with everything else. So that would be my suggestion on amending the bylaw. I don't know if I would have to do a motion on that as well, but I don't know if there are any thoughts on that. So it would just be an amending the bylaw to start the description of heritage attributes with a description of the building, and then everything else is a sub to that. Does that make sense? Is someone willing to do that motion for that amendment? Jonathan, a seconder? Art? Keith, I should say. Any further discussion on that?
Just a question, Chair. What prompted you to have this sort of chain thought about how they should operate, how the bylaw should be amended? What occurred that drove that?
Many hearings. This is actually something that has been coming up much more regularly. This is, I think, something we did mention within the working group is we needed to focus on the building, and it was carried over in the one bylaw, but not in the other two. So this is, in my mind, this is a minor amendment just to clarify what the attributes are. So I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. So it is the same general motion with the amendment that staff amend the bylaws in accordance with Regulation 38521, and that the heritage attributes be amended put the focus on the building first. May I have a mover for that? No, I think James, yes, and then the counselor has a vote on that. So I'll call the question. All those in favor? That's opposed. That is carried. Thank you again. That brings us to 117 Raisin Road. I would have the same comments that I've had on the previous bylaw with that additional language, as well as putting the focus on the building. I'd like to put that forward as amendment if someone would move that amendment. Counselor, may I have a seconder for the amendment? James? All those in favor? Opposed? Any questions on this bylaw? Any additional questions on this bylaw? So I will may I have a mover for the bylaw? Seconder, counselor? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. And thank you to staff for doing this and for your patience as we work through some of those nuances. To jump back, this brings us to information items 8. For staff update, there is the Ontario Heritage Conference. I don't know if staff wanted to speak to that.
Thank you, through you. So we just thought we would add this to the agenda to see if there's interest in any of the members attending this year. The dates are June 18th to the 20th. The early bird rate for general attendees is right now is $290 plus HST. To attend Friday only is $220, and then to attend Saturday only is $180. And I believe there is some funds set aside in the 2026 Heritage Committee budget to consider requests to attend amongst the members.
Questions from the committee? I can say I've attended the conference over the last 20 years. It is well worth attending. And I would encourage people and I think James, you've gone as well. It's well worth it if you haven't attended the conference, and it's in Hamilton this year. So is there any interest? Maybe. So we might have some interest. I'm assuming if people are interested to contact you directly, or do you need a motion from us here? Okay, so if there's interest.
June 18th through the 20th. Yeah.
Any other questions? If not, we'll move to item 8.1.3, United Counties of Leeds and Grenville Retaining Wall Project.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. So there was a request to add this to the agenda just for staff to provide a bit of an update on the project to replace the retaining wall at Prince Street and King Street. As it is a county road, the project is under the jurisdiction of the United Counties of Leeds and Grenville. The property associated with the retaining wall is not designated under the Heritage Act. We did consult with the Public Works Department of the United Counties and confirmed that the contract was awarded in November of 2025 and that they did attempt to start the work late in 2025. However, the winter weather came upon us very quickly around that time, and so they were delayed in terms of starting the project. They have provided regular updates to township infrastructure and operations staff. The project involves removing the existing masonry wall and constructing a new engineered retaining wall, and to address the slope stability of that area as well as improve safety for the public. They're now hopeful to start the project the third week of May, I believe, following the end of the half load season for the trucks. And staff recently received some design drawings that we can offer to circulate if there's interest in taking a look at them for information purposes.
Through you, Mr. Chair, are they replacing the wall with a concrete wall, or are they replacing the masonry, the stone blocks that were there now?
Thank you, Chair. And through you, I've just taken a quick look at the drawings, and there's reference to a product called Magnum stone being used, which is, I believe, a concrete product. With the circulation of the design drawings, staff can send a link that will provide an example of what the product looks like and the specs of it, if there's interest in that as well.
So that sounds like the existing stone blocks are not being used.
That's correct.
Through you, I'm wondering, do we have any information on the age of the wall? Is that associated with the construction of the church?
Through you, Chair, staff do not have that information.
Other questions, comments? I would myself be interested in seeing the drawings, so if those could be circulated, that would be appreciated. I'm familiar with the Magnum Stone product, and if people do want to see what it looks like, I do have it up here on my computer, so I can share that. So it's not as bad as some of the products I've seen. Any other updates from staff? Council update. Councillor, is there any update you would like to provide?
I wasn't aware I was supposed to. So. Do you have any do you have any questions for me? Then
Okay, well, thank you.
We're all good then.
Brings us to item 8.3, Heritage Properties Working Group update. Yes, and I will actually say to Keith, I am behind on the bylaws. That is my fault completely. I was being sick. I was actually intending to have the bylaws here today, but I wasn't able to finish it in time. And my hope is to bring that as quickly as possible. So I'm actually in the process of writing those bylaws myself. So
if I understand correctly, then we would deal with this at the next meeting.
yes, and if needed, we could look at a special meeting to address those.
Okay.
Could you just remind me, is that one cemetery lilies we're interested specifically in, or is
there's two. There is Lily's, which is the one that I'm finishing up, and I just completed some updated photography of the cemetery that's off Highway 2.
Lansdowne.
Yeah.
or Ebenezer? Ebenezer.
It's at Ebenezer, but I think they call it now the Lansdowne Cemetery.
Yes. So the research has been completed at this point. It's just actually writing the bylaw. So so that should be done in the next couple weeks, now that I'm back on my feet. Other questions? Any other business? Not seeing any. Is someone willing to do a motion to adjourn? James? Seconded by Jonathan. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you so much.